Now we know how to draw to the screen. Let's first start working on our paddle. The paddle will be at the bottom and you'll be able to move it left and right in order to catch the ball and bounce it back up towards the bricks. So let's go ahead and get rid of these squares we're drawing here. And let's create a class to handle all the aspects of a paddle. Let's go into source, create a new file. I'm just going to call it paddle.js. And we'll have a class of paddle. We might need a constructor, and we're going to need a method for drawing the paddle. Now the draw method is going to need the context, so we'll pass that in. And we're going to need some attributes for this paddle. So let's set some things up here. When this paddle is created, let's set a width. I'm just going to guess here. We can always update this later. I'm going to say 150. Let's set the height equal to, I don't know, maybe 30 pixels. And we need a position. So this should probably know how big the game screen is. So that way, if we update the game screen later, we can just set it in one place. So in our index, let's have a constant here of game width, 800, and a constant of game height, 600, and we will pass this in game height. There we go. We'll pass this into our paddle class when we want to create it. So our paddle is going to take a game width and a game height. So the position of the paddle needs to be in the center of the screen. So let's see here. Let's say this dot position equals, and I like to make the position an object. That way we can say position X is, this position, position Y is this position, and then we can just update this by saying something like this dot position dot X, and you can update it. So let's go with this right now. Y, we're going to be at the very bottom of the screen, but a little bit above it. So we want to say game height minus this dot height minus how much do we want off the bottom. Let's just say 10 pixels. I'll explain this in a little more detail once we finish it. We want to start in the middle of the screen, so we'll say game width over 2 minus this dot width over 2. Now let's just draw this up and then I can better explain how this is working. So we'll say ctx.fillRect. We want to say it's going to be in this dot position dot X, this dot position dot Y, and the size of it is this dot width and this dot height. So now we have our draw function. Let's go back into index.js. We're going to say we're going to have a paddle here. It's going to be a new paddle, and it takes in the game width and game height. So game width, game height, and we just need to say paddle.draw. Now it's giving us an error because it doesn't know what paddle is. So on our paddle class, we need to export this. So export default class paddle. So now we're exporting this. So in our index.js file, we can import paddle from source paddle. Alright, so now that this class knows what, or this file knows what paddle is, we're instantiating it, and then we're going to say draw. But draw needs to have the context of our game. There we go, so we have our paddle drawn. Now let me go back and explain how we calculated this. So we want this to be in the middle of the screen. Let's think about the Y position first. The square is drawn from the top left corner. So if we want this to be at the bottom of the screen but off the page by about 10 pixels, what we need to do is we need to take the game height, so 800, which will be right down here at the bottom, move it up the height of the square, which is 30, and then subtract 10 to give it just that little bit of buffer. So game height minus this height minus 10 puts it right here off the bottom of the page. For the X position, we want to center it between 0 and 600. So in order to do that, we take the game width and divide it by 2. That puts us at 300, which would be right in the center. But since the square is built from the top left corner, we need to move it to the left by half of the width. And that gives us our center position here. Working with classes like this allow us to know that this file is the paddle. We can adjust the height, maybe do it by 20. That looks a little better. And we also want to set the style. Remember the context was set by that last time we did the fill style. So let's do ctx.fillStyle equals I don't know, let's just do a green. How about a light blue? Alright.